So Bitcoin, if you focus on a lot of social media out there, you would understand Bitcoin is clearly a great monetary asset, right? It is the monetary revolution, and it's setting up a new financial system, and it's new money itself. So that is about Bitcoin as an asset. But one of the more nuanced thing which gets completely missed out is that Bitcoin is also a protocol, and a protocol with value. So you have a protocol like internet or messaging protocol, but where each message can have its own value. Now that is super useful, because if a message can have its own value, then you could use it to anchor a lot of stuff, to represent a lot of stuff. And this is where you have to understand that there's an interplay between Bitcoin as a monetary asset and Bitcoin as the protocol for value messaging, and they both benefit each other. So while there is a lot of focus on Bitcoin as a monetary asset, what RGB helps us do, and that's why Bitcoin Tribe, is use the other aspect of it, where you can build a lot of real world asset which exists out there, which is like all these fiat currencies and everything that will eventually go to zero against this monetary asset. But while they don't go to zero, in that meanwhile, which can last decades or I don't know how long, you should be able to also build it on top of Bitcoin, right? That will help Bitcoin in terms of minor fees, in terms of stability, in terms of adoption, in terms of people knowing more about Bitcoin, and better wallet interfaces existing. So this is where Bitcoin Tribe helps the Bitcoin asset by using Bitcoin protocol to build real world assets on top of it, right? And that is kind of a bridge between the old world and the new world, and that is what really inspired us to build Bitcoin Tribe. Yeah, so first of all, we wanted to focus on everyone. What that really means is that, first of all, we need to make it accessible everywhere. So, not just on one platform or the other. We want it to be available on multiple platforms. So, it's the only RGB wallet today which is available on iOS and Android, right? That is super important for us. And most of the people want to use mobile apps which are freely available. So that is one major differentiator. The other differentiator is when you use Tribe, you will realize that how much of the technology is abstracted away, right? So there is definitely a place where there are apps which expose the technology so that you can learn more about it. But what we are focusing on is, first of all, Bitcoin itself is conceptually difficult. On top of that, there's Lightning, and then on top of that, there's RGB. There's just too much of technology. So though we understand that, we want to abstract it all away. We want to abstract it in a way where you don't have to worry about that. First, you have to create UTXOs for issuing assets, then you have to use UTXOs, and then this and then that. When you use Tribe, it just says, okay, by the way, we will use some of your sats for issuing these assets. Like, we treat sats as a fuel for other assets. So it kind of doesn't talk about UTXO, it doesn't talk about fueling it up, or that you will need more and stuff like that. It just does all in the background. It just says that, by the way, to create more assets, you will have to do these transactions which are this much fee. So other than the fee, user is not really concerned about the tech. So as long as we keep that transparent and abstract the tech away, that is amazing. We are also thinking in Tribe, if you look at Tribe, we are thinking about the whole picture, not just how you issue, send and receive asset. That's just a simple feature of the app. But what about how do I know whether your asset can be trusted? So we have built a registry around it. Registry is a simple list, but that's not enough. You as an issuer should be able to put your weight behind it. Like, you should be able to say that, okay, I have issued this asset. So that is also something which Bitcoin Tribe makes possible. You can issue an asset, you can verify that, okay, this is my Twitter handle or X handle, or this is my domain, and I have issued it. So that means that the person who is using the asset, or who is buying it or receiving it, that can verify that this is actually the real asset. This is not some asset that someone has created, because RGB is an open tech. Anyone can issue at any time or type of asset and call it anything, right? So how do you build that intermediary layer of trust? That is also something we are tackling with. So it's a holistic solution. Yeah, absolutely. See, RGB itself is evolving, so our first job is to keep abreast with it, so that we upgrade and test and get user feedback on every single upgrade. So that's super important. Uh, uh, that's the technical upgrade, but the ecosystem is also maturing. For example, a new service is launched. There is Kaleidoscope. There are a lot of people doing stuff. So we need to integrate with all of them, because if you just play like a single person team, you will not go anywhere. So you have to integrate with others. Someone is doing swap service, someone is providing lightning infrastructure. So there are a lot of partnerships, ecosystem partnerships that we are doing. And then so there is the technical roadmap I talked about. There's the ecosystem play roadmap I talked about, where we are partnering with a lot of other players. Then there is a economic roadmap, where we are actually have to get in relationship with issuers, because unless there is real world issuers on the platform, on the RGB platform, it doesn't make sense. It's just a toy. So we will be, working with a lot of actual issuers out there, and trying to get more and more assets issued on RGB. So it's a multi-dimensional roadmap that we are looking at. So that's where I was saying that this game is a big one, and you can't play it alone. You have to have your, left fingers and right fingers, just to take a football analogy. So you don't want to do everything. Then it's too big a thing to bite. So we are partnering with all these infrastructure providers and other companies who provide this service, like Thunderstack, who provide the node and lightning infrastructure for RGB. Yeah, that's an interesting one. It's basically the belief that assets, when you work with assets, when you are looking at the assets you want to own, especially because these assets are of self-custody manner, it's not kept with the institution somewhere. You do not have an institution to trust on, right? So people psychologically would want some kind of a social trust at least built in, because let's face it, if you can't, if in a real world, if you have something where you don't have an institution to help you out, or some kind of a system, you always go to your friends and family, or people you really trust to help you out. So we do believe that there is a place for friends and family, basically, which is like my tribe, to help you in managing these assets, custodying these assets, transferring these assets. So we want to combine these two pieces about the assets and about your social network. That's basically the capital, your social capital and your value capital. So that's where the name tribe came in.
Anant, thank you very much for your time.
Sure. Thank you so much.